Good evening, everybody. So I'd like to thank you for being here this evening. I'd like to thank Mark Bauerlein for being here with us, coming all the way from Wisconsin, especially to be here with us this weekend. Just to give a little introduction, Mark earned his doctorate in English at UCLA in the 80s. And among his many scholarly achievements, he taught at Emory University from 1989 to 2018. And during that time, he took a break to be a director of the Office of Research and Analysis at the National Endowment for the Arts. And among his many scholarly works, he has published essays and articles in the Wall Street Journal, the Weekly Standard, the Washington Post, the Times Literary Supplement, the Chronicle of Higher Education. And he's written a number of books, and he's senior editor at First Things, among many other things. He has also worked on Common Core and has been an advisor on literature in the ELA standards for the states of Florida, Georgia, and Arkansas. And I just want to thank Mark for coming here all the way to Sioux Falls and to St. Lambert. We sent an email, we got an answer back in a flash, so a great readiness and zeal. What's really struck me in our contact with Mark over the last few months and this last day has been his great zeal for a great cause, the health of our families, our children, our nation, even in a way our civilization, and the souls as well. And Mark's talks are the first in a series of events that we will be having here at the Parish, including a book study of Genesis of Gender by Abigail Favale, and that will finish with a presentation by Abigail in November. And then we'll have an introduction to St. John Paul II's Theology of the Body, given by the Theology of the Body Institute later in March of next year. So as you will hear this weekend, our goal is to address some of the great issues that confront our families, our communities, our society, our culture, and our nation. So I just want to, again, thank Mark for being here and to address these very, very important issues that touch all of us and our families, our children, and our grandchildren. So thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Father. He thanked me for coming. No, I have to thank him for the invitation for my hosts here. It is a pleasure and a joy and an inspiration to come to settings like this one. And, you know, I have to say, when I come to have meals with the Father and others, and we actually say a blessing before we eat, that's so nice, okay? It's so wonderful. And I'm being in academia for 30 years as a prof, and then also as a graduate student. That didn't happen when we would sit down and do events and so on. And it's so lucky to be in a world, or to be a person who is able to pray. As I said to a group of students, young people at Catholic University a few weeks ago, Catholic students, and I said, you guys are so lucky. We look at other Americans your age, they can't go home at night and sit down, kneel down. The day is over, it's quiet, and they can take 5 minutes and simply to commune, to offer, to give thanks, to pray to the Lord. What a blessing this is in the modern world. And if you haven't been outside that kind of world, if you haven't lived in an intensely secular place like higher education, you sort of cannot appreciate the gift, right? The gift of prayer. I mean, it's just the psychological, the emotional gift of prayer that one can have. And so it's great to be in a church. And I know this because I was not in a church for 30 years. and very aggressively. Tonight, I'll talk a little bit about that. But tonight I was going to read, we've got 2 hours, and so I was going to read a lecture off a paper, word for word, for an hour and 55 minutes and leave 5 minutes for questions. Just kidding. I'll talk for about an hour, and then we'll have a lot of Q&A, because these are issues that touch all of us, these darn kids, and their doggone cell phones, and those demons in Silicon Valley who are out for their souls, as we know. But the topic, the false idols, the false gods of modernity. And you've heard of this before. And again, I think, I can talk about this because I was there for a long time with the false gods of modernity. I grew up with Catholic parents. I should say my mother and father went through Catholic schools. They were from deeply Catholic families. My mother in Colorado, up in the mountains. My father in Kansas, and he was an altar boy. She went to Catholic schools. The nuns, really tried their best with her. They couldn't always govern her spirit, but I was born in 1959. They had my sister, my older sister, 5 years older than we were. I have a twin brother. They had her running through Catholic schools. But by the time my brother and I were school age, the 60s had caught up with them. They were caught up in their own things, and divorce and separation and extramarital affairs and everything mixed them up. And so we didn't go to Catholic school. My brother and I didn't get that Catholic formation at all. We were baptized Catholic, but really never made confirmation, confession, any of that stuff. And when I was 17, I was kind of, looking at the world, feeling some spiritual sense of things. God, was out there somewhere, but didn't really go to church very much. Sometimes my mother would drag us to the Catholic church there in Rockville, Maryland, and we would sit there and, C&E, right, and Christmas and Easter, and then that was it. It didn't really penetrate. But when I was 17, something kind of happened, and I had this conversion experience. God was gone. Okay, I was converted to atheism, aggressive atheism. There's nothing out there. There's no spirit. There's no heaven. There's no God. There are no angels. Nothing. All of that didn't really matter, and it just didn't touch me. And the guides I took were not from the Bible anymore. It wasn't from the Catholic Catechism. I was one of those young guys. I wasn't a very good student. I didn't really do much homework. Got in trouble often. But I was reading Nietzsche, and I was reading Freud. Okay, those were my lights. And Freud I liked because. Does anyone know the book Freud, the title of the book Freud wrote about religion? Anyone know the title? Sir? Got that? The Future of an Illusion. Religion's an illusion, Freud said. I like that. Yeah, it's just an illusion. And for him, he actually diagnosed it psychoanalytically, and he said, what is religion? It is an organization of that infantile desire for the Father who's going to protect you. Okay? You're 3 years old. You're the toddler. You've been connected to the mother, but you're starting to become aware of the outside world. The Father comes in, and he's the guardian, right? He saves you. He preserves you. But it's an infantile perspective. What religion is the holdover of that infant, he uses the word infantile, that infantile desire for the big daddy to care, provide, to secure. And Freud, it's time we grow up, right? That was the assertion on his part. And I loved that, right? Nietzsche I liked because he was so irreverent about the church. His last book that he wrote before he went really crazy and went into an insane asylum was called The Antichrist. This little book called The Antichrist. And he said things in it such as, there is only one person who deserves any respect in the entire New Testament, Pontius Pilate. Okay, that was Nietzsche, all right? Again, 19 years old, a little rebellious, getting in trouble sometimes. Here was intellectual trouble, all right? Here's where I could just scoff at the institutions, right? The authorities, the respectable, the establishment. That's the way that I could do it. And the point Nietzsche made about Pilate, just to let you know, he loved Pilate's statement, what is truth? What is truth? That, he said, that takes down the whole thing. Truth, these people, okay? With that note of contempt, right? That touched me. Now, here's the thing. That loss of faith didn't make me feel good. The only good that I would feel out of that was when I could mock people of faith. When I can put them down as backward, right, ignorant. I had the insight. I was one of those few that Nietzsche celebrated who saw through the illusions, right? I'm too smart and too courageous for that. I'm not afraid, right, of life, of the universe there. So it was a great big self-congratulation, but other than that, it didn't make me happy, right? I was actually miserable. I'm dying, oblivion, eternity. I'm nothing. I'm a little speck in time, in the universe. I have such a paltry existence. Okay? But that wasn't the full thing, and I came to realize later. The beginning of the Catholic Catechism, right? It says that the worship of God, the love of God is written in the human heart. It's written there from the time of our being, that our being begins. We have the natural inclination toward the transcendent, right? And we can't change that. And what I found was I felt like I could defeat people of faith intellectually. I know Karl Marx, his arguments about religion. I know Nietzsche. I know Freud, right? I know all the modern atheists, Bertrand Russell. I read Russell's Why I'm Not a Christian. Right now I think, who cares, right? You know, Russell. But that point in the Catechism, faith is natural to us. God isn't an invention. He's in the human heart from the beginning. We naturally incline. I saw this in my son. It's one reason why I came back to religion when I had a child. But so I felt I could intellectually defeat believers. But I also sensed, whenever I would face them, I felt weak in comparison to their strength. They have something that I don't have. What I said a few minutes ago, they can pray. That's an advantage that they have, right? I felt that they have a certain moral courage, the courage of conviction about something more, and I don't have that. They have a righteous strength. I don't have that. I had to admit that, and that my presumption of superiority, and that's very powerful among atheists if you've encountered them before, right? The new atheists, Christopher Hitchens and Sam Harris, they really felt we're just smarter than those believers. Dawkins, they had a kind of contemptuous attitude, but if they face off against a person of faith, I don't think that contempt would hold up very well. Maybe you've experienced this yourself. They have a little bit of exasperation over your solidity of God. And I think that's because of what the Catechism begins with, that natural disposition to believe, written in the human heart. So that if you don't believe, you're divided. Your head and your heart don't coincide. When they do coincide, that's power, right? Conviction gives you that moral courage. This is right. I know it. I believe. The atheist doesn't have that in that sense, because something inside me, the atheist, works against what's up here. Okay? And so that's why I came to realize there's something wrong with my own atheism, and we can talk more about it in the Q&A if you want to go into detail. But I came back into the church only about 10 years ago. Again, having a child, getting away from a lot of the academia stuff, working for First Things magazine, and came to see that people who don't have faith suffer. They are suffering precisely because of something in their hearts is contrary to what's in their heads, their beliefs. Now, this gets the title, The Modern World. Here is what I see the modern world doing. The modern world is doing many, many things to help people overcome that suffering, that conflict between head and heart, by creating another idol of one kind or another, by giving them another God, another faith. God doesn't go away in that human heart, but it can be altered, right? God can be distorted in that human heart. We can have false idols that people can worship instead of worshiping God. And we've got a lot of them in the modern world. Modern institutions have found a way to support people in their infidelity by giving them another fidelity, right? And I'll just run through a few of these. Eternal youth. I don't believe in immortality of the soul with God in heaven, but there can be an eternal youth. Now, literally, this is the case going on in Silicon Valley. Do you know about the pursuit of immortality on earth is very important to people in Silicon Valley? If I can translate my consciousness into some kind of robotic condition that won't age, I can live forever here on earth. I can get my brain transferred into some kind of art. My consciousness can go into an artificial intelligence that will live forever. They really want this. There are a lot of creeps in Silicon Valley. Mark Zuckerberg is a strange person. Jack Dorsey is the Twitter inventor. He's an oddball. Elon Musk, he's a little off on certain things. And immortality, again, on earth here, not up there, not with God. God isn't part of their immortality. Earthly immortality, that's a dream. And they're pursuing it, and they're putting billions of dollars into the earthly survival of themselves. Okay, I think earthly survival of ourselves beyond 100 years sounds awful, actually. Why would you want? I mean, think about the Greek gods, the immortals. Aren't they horrible people. If you see them as people, aren't they awful? They're vain. They are selfish. They're competitive with one another. They're cruel and vindictive. What do they do to us mortals? The immortals, what do they do to us mortals? They step on us, right? They abuse us. You never, ever want to get mixed up with the gods. In Greek myth, getting mixed up with the gods, bad thing to do. You're going to pay. Somehow you're going to pay. And why are the gods so awful? If you think of them as human beings, not as immortals, but as human characters morally, why are they so awful? Because they never die. They never die. They're bored with themselves, with one another. Actually, they rely on us for any of their dignity. Okay? Our suffering is what gives them any validity. They never die. We do. You want to live forever? What is tomorrow then? What counts? You live for without that horizon of the end, without death. Again, life becomes meaningless. In fact, here. So, eternal youth. That's one mode of eternal youth. Another mode of eternal youth we see among young Americans today. They don't get married and they don't have kids. Right? The millennials, in fact, are marrying at a much lower rate. By age 40, 1/3 of millennial men will never have gotten married. That's a huge statistic, and means they're not going to have kids either. They don't have kids out of wedlock much. The birth rate is way down. Now, what does this have to do with death? Having children, raising them, passing along to the next generation, that's an acknowledgement, I'm going to pass away. This time on earth is not all about me, right? I've got this little tiny life who depends on me. I don't matter so much. I got to get up and I got to get on an airplane at 8 in. I'm dead tired. My child is sick. I don't matter. I have to stay up all night with that child. And I get on the plane. And then doesn't matter, no sleep. It is one form of sacrifice, right? And the generational pattern is a reminder of the sequence of life, which includes death. Not having children, not getting married is a perpetuation of eternal youth. Eternal youth in the heads of young Americans today. And so much supports this, right? The culture, modernity, supports that decision, because how often do you see a young person on TV, in movies, with a life cycle? Well, I'm 23. I hope to get married very soon. I hope to begin to have children. I'd like to have 3 children. I want to raise them. I want to have a stable. How often do you see that laid out as a model of life for young people? No. What do we get? Remember the TV show Friends from the 90s? Oh, those insufferable 6 people. They're 30 years old and they act like they're 17. No marriage. There was a birth out of wedlock. Lesbian couple. Anyway, they were friends. And what one sees is 30-year-olds in America today, again, acting like they're still 17. And they want to remain 17 forever. You're idolizing your own youth here. Let it go. It's time to move on. Well, what next? Middle age, parenthood, old age, retirement, death. Okay? They can't go there again. And the friends idea just postpones that reality, right? Beauty, celebrity, These are other modes of, I think, the denial of death as well. The eternal youth attitude. It's an idea of perpetuation of young life forever. That's an idol. It's a false god because you're going to get old, okay? It's going to happen. Another idol. The woke movement is a utopian movement. Okay? It is a vision of a world without discrimination, with no judgment, where everyone is free to be what he wants to be without interference. That's the idea. That's the utopia here. Okay? And the woke movement you have to see as a deeply moral movement. I remember critics in the 90s, conservative critics of youth, of the culture, of higher education, would talk about it as relativism. Oh, this anything goes thing, you know, whatever. No. The woke thing is deeply judgmental, highly censorious. Cancel culture will make you pay if you violate the moral norms of this woke. And what are the norms in the service of, again, a better world, a world without victims? Now, why is this a false idol? Because every single utopia in human history has ended badly. The French Revolution didn't go so well. The Russian Revolution, not that one. The Chinese, the Cambodian Revolution. These were all visions of a better society, a better life. The utopian communities in the United States in the 1840s, for instance, there were several of these. Those fell apart because of certain, internecine struggles. The hippie communes in the 60s through the 70s, those didn't end well either. The lessons of history for utopias are right there to be seen. And what happens with utopia? Well, we have a vision of a better world, a better life, but they keep getting frustrated by certain people. So what do? We will get the ideal society that we want if we just get rid of the bad people. It's that simple. Remove them. Bad people are preventing a better life for all. So bring out Madame Guillotine, right? And we'll take care of them. Put them in the gulag. That will take care of them. And the softer forms of removal in the United States, the cancellation. You're getting fired from your job. You're losing, you're losing your reputation loss. Social media forms of estrangement or shunning taking place, or even at the high school level, right? The scapegoating or the shunning. And what is worse for a 17-year-old than to be shunned by all the other 17-year-olds? Okay, that is a hellish existence. So but the utopia, it's a form of idolatry, the woke, and you can see it is held with religious fervor by those committed ones. I am a trustee at this new college of Florida, which you may have seen some of the news stories about that. Governor DeSantis appointed us to try to revive this struggling college, and it's small. It only had 680 students when we got there, but it was an extremely woke, as one student put it, this is a queer campus, expletive deleted, and it's going to stay that way. It yelled this in a board meeting. Queer campus. And again, the fervor is powerful. The police have had to hustle us out and form, barriers so we don't get mobbed. I smile and wave to them, actually. But the fury with which our reforms have been received is hard to impart to you. The profound anger at some actually modest changes that we've been made renders the deeply religious commitment of the woke outlook. It's a religion, okay? The proper religion is gone, an improper religion is going to step in and take its place. That's the real bottom line here. We take away faith in God from the young, they will find another faith. They need to find another faith. It's what gives meaning. It gives a foundation to their lives. And again, the modern world has been giving these replacements, forming these replacement politics. When we were talking about this at dinner, or maybe this morning, politics is a religion for some people. It's not for us, because we know the world isn't all about politics. If you don't have God, politics becomes extremely important, becomes crucial. No heaven? Well, all we have is this world, okay? No eternity? Well, all we have is today. And so we've got to control this place. And so it's inevitable that people of faith are going to end up being persecuted. Jesus predicted this. It's right there in the Sermon on the Mount. You know, we have to see we're blessed for being persecuted for Him, right? And there are other false idols as well. Technology, which goes along with that eternal youth, but other than that, the technology of social media, the technology that tells people of the wonders that are coming in the digital age. I'm going to talk about this a little bit tomorrow, but maybe a lot of you do remember when the digital age hit in Web 2.0. Not in the 90s, Web 2.0 came along around 2000, 2001. You remember when we had all these search engines? There were about a dozen of them. There was Netscape, there was InfoSeek, I can't even remember all of them. But that was Web 1.0, as it was called. Google came along. Google was Web 2.0. Amazon, Web 2.0. There were all these stores and everything. Amazon, and none of them had dominance the way Google and Amazon do. And then social media came along, texting, the video games got social in a way they hadn't been before. The web just really kicked the high gear in the aughts. So that, Fortnite came along. And the brilliance of Fortnite, I saw my son playing Fortnite a lot, was they could play with one another. So my son could be on Fortnite in his room, and a buddy of his could be on the same game in the same zone, the way Fortnite works. It's a battle zone, and involved as well, and they could talk to one another at the same time. Brilliant. What better way to hook boys onto these games? But there was, in the aughts, a tremendous amount of utopian cheerleading. This is amazing. We are entering a whole other millennium now. This is comparable to the invention of the printing press, or the invention of writing itself. And it's going to make everyone smarter, more informed, more worldly. They are going to write better than ever before. Their vocabulary is going to explode because it's all right there, okay? Right there on the phone, okay? And the iPhone came along with 2010. It took a leap to be able to the pictures, right? The pictures and video, right around those years, it really took off, so that young people could walk around with 250 pictures of themselves right here in their pocket. And this was celebrated, right? Wonderful. And the digital natives, okay? The early adopters were the kids. Boomers like me, we're always going to play catch up. Our lives are too grooved in 19th century ways, 20th century ways. They're 21st century here. We're in a new age, a new time, a new era. It's revolutionary. That's why we call them not, what should they have been called? What should millennials have been called? Y. We had Gen X. Now it's Gen Y. No, Gen Y? It's so generic. Millennials, right? Think about the meaning of that term. The third millennium. They're the millennials, okay? There's some millennials here. It's okay to be offended. That's all right, all right? I've been booed a lot by millennials because of this Dumbest Generation book that I wrote in 2008. Maybe I should say, I wrote this book, the book in 2008, The Dumbest Generation. That's a quote from a Philip Roth novel. I didn't make it up, but I liked it. So, The Dumbest Generation, How the Digital Age Stupefies Young Americans and Jeopardizes Our Future, or Don't Trust Anyone Under 30. That was the full title. And that last part, I had a USA Today reporter interview me. She was about 24. And she said, "Do you really believe you can't trust anyone under 30? And I said, "It's a joke, okay?" There was this slogan back in 1967. I had to explain to her the joke, and not realizing that she was proving my point. So, but I did a lot of, that book, the timing was right because there was so much, again, cheerleading. They made idols out of the millennial with the device. There were episodes of 60 Minutes. Who are the millennials? There was a book called Here Come the Millennials. Another book was Millennials, the Next Greatest Generation, right? And it was, again, cheerleading because it's the digital age and they're the pioneers. They're the ones, they're going to show old fogies like me who said, "Get off my lawn," that this is the new way. You're old. Your ways are grooved in pre-digital habits. You write with a fountain pen, okay? We're doing things so fast, you can't keep up with us. You should see how fast we can text here. This was the idea, and a lot of this was technology is the future. This idol made out of the device, the handheld, right? The tool that they could do with their thumbs so fast. And they're doing, you would read these articles. We are doing things like never before, right? We're the first generation in human history, blah, 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 blah. Now, every young generation wants to lay a claim, but the culture backed them up. As I said, Wired magazine was telling them how great they were all the time. My colleagues, my professor educators, because they never want to tell kids, look, you're stupid, okay? You need to go read a few more books. That's bad form, right? However true it may be. They want to be affirming, support the kids, child-centered learning, and all this stuff. So this was, again, reinforced. And a few of us, I did that book, and I got lucky with the timing because young people and these tools, I think people are ready for a contrary opinion. PBS, Nova, that PBS documentary show, they did an episode about the millennials, and it was all adulatory. The millennials are amazing. These new tools, what's happening. In 2008, they did this. And I got a call from the producers a few months later. It was just after the Dumbest Generation book came out. And it was the producers, and they said, "Hello, we did a show about the millennials a few months ago." And I said, "Yeah, I know. And they said, and then we read your book. And it was a big, giant pitcher of ice water poured over us. So we want to do a follow-up episode on the negative, on the contrary side of things. So I think there was sort of a, okay, let's hear something a little different. Maybe all these tools in the hands of the young, maybe there's a problem. Maybe doing 3,330 text messages a month, which is what millennials averaged by 2010, maybe that's not quite so good. Especially when we see educational results. They're writing more than ever before, text messaging, chatting, emails. Why then do writing scores keep going down? Well, because that kind of writing is actually harmful to expository writing, academic writing, analytical writing. That actually harms their academic work, their capacity to express themselves, generally, I would say. So the evidence was building. And I should say I have books. I have that book that I can sign and sell afterwards for half price. It's just my cost, so I don't make money on those. If people would like a copy, I would often do the book signings, and older people would say, "Here, I want you to sign this for my son," so that he. So anyway, all right. But the thing about this is, we now have a clear pushback on the technological utopianism. People know all that phone time is not good. All that screen time is not good. Do you remember in the 90s the digital gap, the digital divide? That was the digital divide. What was the digital divide in the 90s? It was the worry that high-income kids are going to have all this internet connectivity, and they're going to have a great advantage over low-income kids who won't have all the connectivity. So we're going to have a digital divide that aggravates the education result divide, which will then aggregate even more the economic income inequity. So they actually passed laws. The Telecommunications Act put a tax. If you guys all look at your phone bill, there's a federal tax on there that they started doing in the 90s that would all go to wiring low-income areas. So they have more connectivity there, libraries and ensuring wireless in these areas. We have a new digital divide in the last few years. Upper income kids have far less screen time than low income kids. And it's reflected in reading scores and writing scores. The more time you spend on a screen, the lower your educational achievement. And a lot of upper income parents know this, and they lower screen use at home. Low-income kids, they don't have those controls, single parentage, babysitting, using it as a babysitter, all the reasons that reinforce the educational gap. The titans in Silicon Valley, the creators of video games and the like, they don't send their kids to public schools, which are all wired now with computers provided by Silicon Valley companies. They don't send their kids. They send their kids to places like the Waldorf schools, which are very low tech, low screen time. Steve Jobs, he didn't let his kids get on screens at home. Now, these guys hired psychologists who were experts in addiction, who could show them how to create screens, flashes, patterns, scrolling that would activate those dopamine levels that cocaine would activate. They wanted our kids to become addicts And that's why they didn't let their own kids do it. These are the demons. I think Silicon Valley is Satan's primary home on planet Earth at the present time. And the phone, those are all demons. That I have one right here in my pocket. The demons are they're after us at all times. So anyway, but the technology, that there were many years there of technology as, again, an idol. Look at the way people would line up on the very day the next iPhone was coming out. What are you lining up? You're spending hours and hours in a line in a mall at the Apple store. I hate the Apple store. And when my son, he's going to Berkeley, not the bad Berkeley, okay? Berkeley in Boston, the music school. He had to go, they require all this music student. He plays the cello. I want him to play Mahler. He wants to play Iron Maiden on a cello. I can't even, I don't know what to do about this. But at least he's still playing. Anyway, so we go into the Apple store, and I said, he had to buy a computer, and this kid is helping us, and I actually said to him and the kid, listen, Jack, I don't feel good. There are too many screens around here. I got to get out of here. I was just kidding, but the clerk didn't quite know what to say. But still, breaking the idol, the false god of technology, is very hard, right? Because they're after the kids. Okay, we can regulate it as adults because we got all these other things that we have to do, but the screen time for the kids, they believe. And the father told me he gave a talk to kids this morning and told the story of Midas. I don't know if I should. Told the story of Midas, and then he said this. Now, what do you want to? And Midas, be very careful what you wish for. Right? That's the motto. That's the moral of Midas. What do you want? iPhone, tablet. Okay, and who can blame them? Everything in the culture, their peers, tells them to do it. We're fighting a $1 trillion industry: marketing, advertising, invention, the schools that push this technology. So it reinforces the idols. All right, I'm going to wrap it up. So we have Q&A. What is the answer? What is the answer? They always say, you're so down, you're just a curmudgeon. What do you tell us to do? And I say, there's nothing to do. Okay, it's all over. We had a 2,300-year run, the life of the mind, the beauty, the pursuit of beauty, the disinterested pursuit of truth. And not a bad run, but it's all over. The dark ages are upon us. We need to go into the monasteries and try to preserve. Anyway, so so the answer here is, all right, the answer, okay, all of you know what the answer, you're doing the answer, okay? It is prayer, right? It is the Bible, right? Well, I won't go into that, but the magisterium, all right? The catechism. It is reading to your child in bed at night. Very important. A session at night. And a session doing, at first things when I lived in the townhouse, before moving away from Manhattan, because I had to get my son, who was 12 years old at the time. We were living in Father Newhouse's, Newhouse's old apartment for a few years there, but that island of Manhattan, I said, we got to get out of this sewer, this cesspool, this bog, this fen, this blighted, paganized, and I got to get out of here. So we moved to Washington D.C. a lot better, right? So, but I homeschooled him the last year and a half just to try to I got another half to civilize and spiritualize him before he goes off to pagan music school, and who knows what's going to happen to him there. You just pray. You pray that you gave him the foundation that the inevitable disasters won't hurt too much. Anyway, so but you read to your child. Oh, in the townhouse at first things. A lot of the people who worked there, the junior fellows, and there was a Lutheran priest who sort of presided over the towns. Every night, we would do our prayers, at 7:00. And, it meant reading one or two of the Psalms together, or singing a few, a psalmody and a canticle, and running, completing the prayer. And that ritualization every night, that was a healthy, forget the theology, not to forget the theology, but aside from the theology, it was psychologically healthy. It's psychologically healthy for the young to have those rituals and routines. I don't know if my son is staying with it, but I know he got it, and I hope it's in there, because all that can be a foundation, right? That can just hold all of the awful, vulgar, obscene, damaging things at bay. And in other words, what am I saying? Get the right God, right? Give your children the right God to expose the false gods. Is there anything greater than the Sermon on the Mount for those kids? I would tell my students when I teach American literature, all right, let's start for American literature. Let's start with the most influential speech ever given. I just wait a minute and see if what is the most influential speech ever given in all of human history? Oh, the Gettysburg Address? No, it's a good one, but no. The Sermon on the Mount, you guys. It's all over American literature, everywhere. It's all over American speeches, right? Even Barack Obama could cite the New Testament, the Sermon on the Mount, now and then. So we give them, in a way, better to, you can tell them the false gods, but a more persuasive mode is show them the right God, right? Show them the words of the Lord, His own words. That is the strongest protection. Realize there's going to be a God. In all human beings, there's going to be some kind of God at work, because it's in the human heart. It can be twisted and distorted. Satan can take that human heart and lead it down the wrong path. And so, let's open the book to Ephesians and start reading. The school, though, I'll say the school Jack attended, it wasn't a Catholic school. It was a Presbyterian, Geneva school. It's a classical Christian school. And their 8th grade assignment was memorize the entire book of Ephesians. All the kids had to memorize the book of Ephesians. Way to go. Perfect. Because it's in there now. It's lodged. The true God, not the false gods, are there. So let's talk. We can discuss questions. You have microphone. Zach has questions. Zach has questions. So any hands, sir?
In kind of my career, I've seen people who have been greatly damaged in their ability to learn as a result of technology. Do you know of any good methods that can be employed to help restore the memory and the cogitative faculty to its normal function?
It takes time, right? It's going to take time. Here are some of the things that I do. One, memorization and recitation are a great cognitive and psychological workout. If you want to memorize an Emily Dickinson poem, okay, there's a certain slant of light, winter afternoons, that oppresses like the heft of cathedral tunes. Goes on. You work and memorize it, and what does it do for the 16-year-old? One, it makes the 16-year-old absorb diction that the 16-year-old doesn't normally encounter, right? It builds vocabulary. And this is actually very, very important. Building the youth vocabulary. because their lexicon is so depleted. Cool, awesome, stuff, whatever. Those are 4 words I told my son, you cannot use those words in the house. And of course, then there's the like disease, all right? The like pandemic. It's worse than the last one. Like. You know, I would tell my students, if you put a like in every sentence, no one's ever going to respect you. You've got to stop doing this. I can't take it. And so, but then my son, he would catch me sometimes. Dad, you said like. And I said, you got me. Okay, you got me, you little jerk. So, of course, now he's 6'5". And you know what I learned? This doesn't work. Now listen, you. Okay? Just doesn't work anymore, okay? He literally looks down on his father. Anyway, so I've lost. But you build a bigger vocabulary that will make you happier. I often see young people struggling to express what's inside themselves. They don't have the words to do it. They opt for cliches, and a cliche is always false. A cliche is automatically false to your experience. You're different. You're an individual. You have unique outlooks. You know, you have a different perspective from us. Why are you using the same words that everyone else uses? The worst thing is the F word. Everyone uses the F word all the time. It means all sort of different things. It's good, it's bad, it's just emphasis. Okay, no, it's stupid. It is a confession that you do not possess the language to express something. So you go for the F word. My goodness. So that's one thing that the memorization of Robert Frost does. Let's say a Robert Frost poem. It works for you. You've got that inside you. You've got those words. You have something that you've absorbed that is expressive and meaningful. You can trot it out in cocktail parties, impress people. If you have a little Shakespeare, right? That you can impart. Another thing is with the recitation is public speaking, right? In front of others. People get very nervous. I get very nervous about. I've learned to laugh at myself, but that doesn't mean I'm not nervous in speaking in front of people. So it helps just develop the confidence to speak in front of a group. You learn to project your words. Speak openly. Look outward. No, come on. And teenagers, they can be shy, and so it helps them to overcome that shyness. Lastly, it does something very important for the adolescent. Get out of your own head. Get out of yourself. You've got to become Emily Dickinson in a way. You've got to imagine her experience, not you. Okay? It's not about your friends. It's not about your experience. It's about her. So it's like being an actor for a few minutes. And that's, again, a very healthy thing for the naturally narcissistic adolescent to do. And narcissism is an awful condition. Narcissus didn't end well. And you know what? He was never going to end well. Narcissus was never going to be a happy person. He ends up pursuing his own death. That's what's going to happen with narcissism, your own destruction. Narcissists don't form good relationships with others. So that practice is very good. Here, I'll do a Robert Frost poem for you. Think of Frost. This is called Once by the Pacific. He's standing at Big Sur, right? The bluffs above the Pacific Ocean, Northern California, after a big storm. And when the storms hit afterwards, massive waves, the Pacific Ocean. I'm from California, so remember being there several times. And he's standing there. The clouds are still there, but the storm has passed. But the waves are coming in. Big explosion. So it's called Once by the Pacific. Let me see if I can remember it. The shattered water made a misty din. Great waves looked over others coming in and thought of doing something to the shore the water never did to land before. The clouds hung low and hairy in the skies, like locks blown forward into gleaming eyes. You could not tell, but it almost looked as if the shore was lucky in being backed by cliff, the cliff in being backed by continent. It seemed as if a night of dark intent was coming, and not just a night, an age. Someone had better be prepared for rage. There would be more than ocean water broken before God's last put out the light was spoken. Is that a good one? So you know, I'd say, Jack, look. You memorize something. You have these lines from Shakespeare and Romeo and Juliet on your. You get in an argument. You know, you're an argument with your girlfriend. You trot that out. You won. Okay. It's very effective in interaction here. You know, you're out on a date. You know, recite some poetry, ladies. Good. A little poetry. You know, recite it. Just a little Philip Sidney. So, anyway, those kinds of practices reorient the brain away from that fast, hyper-stimulated screen cognition. The next thing is read to your kids at night, even after they have learned to read on their own. 11, 12 years old, read to them Sherlock Holmes stories. Read a Sherlock Holmes story. You read, child sitting there, no distractions, no screen. It's your voice. You're telling the story. It's slow time. It's the end of the day. You know, we've done our prayers. Okay, now lie down. I'm going to read to you, the Red-Headed League, a Holmes story, and that's oral. That's okay. Doesn't always have to be silent reading, but that slow absorption of character, right? Narrative. Dialogue, do it night after night after night. One thing takes a long time. This has to be done over years of practice. They're getting years, okay? And again, all of Satan's minions on TV and the phone and everything, they're pouring in beyond what many of us can even imagine. So we have to be vigilant with that. People would say, well, would you say no video games? And I said, you know what? That time is fine as long as you reserve 1 hour a night. Prayer and reading time. 1 hour a night. I think that counteracts the hustle and bustle of the screen. Because one thing the screen does, these academics, blah, 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 blah. Okay. One thing the screen does, though, is produce slow time in the user. Now, what does that mean? It's a psychological term for something that happens. A kid gets on Fortnite. I mean, there are other games now maybe more popular. This was popular 2 or 3 years ago when my son was in the pandemic. Great idea. Put them all in a room. Put them on a screen. Don't play with your friends. Don't go outside. We're going to put police tape around the park. Okay? Stay in your room. The world is dangerous. Get on your screen all day. That's exactly what 14-year-olds need. Okay? And they wonder why scores last year. Anyway, so what was I saying? Pardon? Oh, slow time, yes. So they get on Fortnite and they get off Fortnite. They've been playing for 3 hours. You ask the child, how long have you been playing? I don't know, 45 minutes. And they really mean it. They're not lying. They experienced it as 45 minutes. That's what it felt like. That's what their brain processed the time as. It's not an accident. It was deliberate. They want the kids to think 45 minutes and hold them for 3 hours. Why? Because they make more money that way. Okay? Time, attention, that's money. That's moolah anyway, it's over. He's gone to college. I'm drinking less, so it's okay. All right, another question.
You mentioned at the beginning of your talk, like the teenage and like young person's urge to rebel against society. And it's one thing that I've been thinking about a lot lately. And I was just wondering, do you have any advice of how to turn that towards rebelling against the right things, aka the woke culture, all of that?
I think the thing for a parent to do in this case is try to turn yourself into your child's best friend. We're just friends. I'm not really your parent. I'm your friend. What do you think? Yeah, good idea? No? Here's what you do. One, they're going to rebel, and it's not unhealthy for some rebel. They got to come into their own. You're a big presence, a big force in their lives, and they're coming into adulthood. So a little rebellion is going to happen. First point, okay, the opposite of what I just said, the friend thing. Give them something meaningful against which they are rebelling. I stand for this. Okay, this is what I represent. Okay, and I'm firm on this. You present to them conviction about the world, conviction about the faith. If it comes off as a little rigid, I think that's okay. All right. You're playing. You're not only standing for something you believe in, but you're also playing a role. You're sort of a foil, because it actually gives your child security even as your child is rebelling. Okay? And if your convictions are accompanied with "I love my child," your child is having a tantrum, whatever, being bad. There has to be punishment, but there also has to be the expression, you're the greatest child. I love you more than anything. Okay? You matter more than anything. Okay? That security in your love should not in any way be in conflict with what you represent in terms of beliefs, values, preferences, attitudes, judgments, politics, whatever. So be meaningful so that your child can look at you as something. I mean, I'm sure my son was embarrassed. He was embarrassed by me when we would go to a restaurant, and I mentioned, dinner, they'd be playing some music, blasting some music, why this happens in so many restaurants. And the waitress would come over, and my son would know it's coming because he would hear his dad say, "Well, what can I get you?" So, well, the first thing is, can you please turn that awful, horrible music down, okay? And he'd be embarrassed, but he knows standards. He may disagree with them, but he does he knows you believe in standards. And that I think that he may have different standards, but he will realize the importance of standards. So that's one thing. I mean, if the rebellion verges into dangerous, right, destructive, drugs, right, staying out and everything, well, that's where you step in. I mean, my son wasn't doing well in school. I took him out in the middle of the year. I said, I gotta just shelve things, and I'm gonna homeschool him. He actually was happy that we could work at home and have a shorter day. He hated school. He was bored. He didn't like the teachers. The lockdowns made school a dreadful experience. So, okay, he was right. But he was rebelling. He was getting in some trouble there at school. So step in, take charge. You really have to. Your first job as a parent is not to your job, your workplace. It's to your children. So you step in. I don't know. I mean, it could be. You got to get away from him. Got to get him away from certain kids. You have conversations. You you go on trips. It's work. It can be, they break your heart, but you let them know you're the most important thing to me. You are the most important thing. And you try to, again, hold them to the faith. You hope that the time you spend reading and praying can draw them out of the rebellion. Rebellion per se is that's going to happen, especially if you're a parent who's very attentive. In a way, it sort of makes their necessity to rebel stronger. Got to get out from under your shadow a bit. I mean, I was very involved in my son's life, and there were things he did that I sort of let slide because it was almost something psychologically he had to do. But if it's serious, you call in help, you call in your priest, you can see about counselors, you can see about a change of life, moving even. A summer, I had some of Jack's friends. This one girl was really depressed. Her father had died, a close friend, and they were having a hard time. They were in Atlanta, and the mother sent the daughter, who's Jack's age, out to Idaho for a semester, schooling. But it was one of these schools, a lot of outdoors stuff, a lot of camping and hiking, some horseback stuff, and it helped her. It really helped her a lot. It got her away, and it was a very routine, organized environment. It made her tired. It I think took her out of her depressive thoughts. So I don't know if I'm helping you or not. I hope so. But I think here's where the church is a sanctuary. The church is a relief, right? The church is a home. It's another home to help with the world, right? And this awful world, this chaotic world that kids grow up in, it is very hard. It's a lot harder to be young today than it was when I was, when I was a kid, when I was that age. So many things that are in their lives now. I mean, I hate to think of by age 15, I've got to think my son and all his friends have seen everything, right? They've seen everything. The porn, the violence, everything. It's just gone through their heads. Things that I never, things that, I mean, when I was 15, if some kid got a hold of a Playboy magazine of his father's, it'd be overwhelming. They're not. They're not overwhelmed by that. They are worldly, way before their time. Leave them alone. Would you leave these kids alone? So, I don't understand why so many of the Gen Zers they're on medication, right? They're having trouble, a lot of trouble, especially boys. They're doing worse than girls are. Anyway, yes. Another.
You're projecting that.
What words of wisdom might you impart for us as grandparents? I know
Grandparents are crucial.
What's our hope?
You are crucial. You are really, really, really important to kids. I mean, I said, my mother, horrible mother. She was a horrible mother, okay? She was a great grandmother, okay? So I forgive her for all the horrible things she did to my brother and to me. She was very good to my son and to my brother's girls. So, I took care of her through Alzheimer's because of her actions as grandmother. But here's the thing, to parents here, you got to get your parents involved in the kids' lives young, right? At age 1, 2, and 3. And parents, you should see grandmothers are a resource, right? What do the kids see grandma's house as? It's the fun zone, okay? It's the fun zone. Here's where we can really have fun. And that's what it should be. And then you're back to the parents, homework, right? Get chores done, sit down and eat. So the extended family, again, in this world of so many broken families, right? Grandparents are they're crucial to the kids. And I also think it's very important for children and teens to be around older people, much older people, 70-year-olds, 80-year-olds. They should be around people who are far beyond them in years. One of the things that the social media did, many awful things that happened, was it created what's called age segregation, right? 15-year-olds can all mingle with 15-year-olds, right? Because they can find on the web. They don't have to relate so much to adults. They really can have this intense peer-to-peer life. Peer pressure, right? Peer contact. 85% of Gen Zers sleep with the phone on, right? Near the pillow, right? Within arm's length. Hey, a ding, 2 a.m, picture. Got to check it out, okay? I mean, a lot of them have sleep problems because of this. But what it does is it intensifies their own age group sensibility. They don't relate to older people so much because their life is so filled, right, with what's going on through the media here. So when they, I would make college students come talk to me in office hours. And part of it would be just conversation, just asking them things. And it was training in talking to people outside your own social connection. You've got to learn to converse. You're going to be in workplaces with people much older than you are when you're 23, 24. So the grandparents are perfect. They become comfortable with adults, much different adults. They're able to relate, even though they don't share music, they don't share gossip, they don't share friends, but they can relate. So the parents need to connect the grandparent with the child. It's healthy. It's emotionally and psychologically healthy for the kids for that to happen. Back in the back.
You mentioned how you believe that there can be a balance between just a little bit of technology and offsetting it with an amount of slow time, as you called it. Do you think that is a better option than just cold turkey wiping out technology with children? Or is there an age range for you? I'd just be curious to hear your thoughts on that.
I love the cold turkey option. I think if you can be absolute, that's fantastic. Okay, I mean, the idea I said with some of the screen time offset, that was sort of a concession, an admission of the opposition is just too strong to keep out all together. And the kids, they want to be in contact with one another. If only, if you could have a 13-year-old just make contact through the landline, and not screen time, the landline, fantastic, even better. Because, it's often said that, oh, young people, they need to learn tech skills, keyboard skills. No, they don't. No, they really don't, okay? Those can be learned pretty easily. What they need, what takes time is the reading that they do, the writing that they do. Oh, by the way, here's another thing about this. I taught English, sometimes a lot of papers. I would actually make students write some of their papers by hand and turn them in by hand. Cursive, preferably, that I would have them do. And I would insist to them that if you write your first draft by hand, your writing will improve. Writing by hand is better than keyboard writing. You take more time with your sentences. You actually tend to revise. You work more as a craftsman with your sentences. You will scratch that verb and write in a different verb, a better verb instead. The keyboard, you're putting it on the screen. You're just tapping out the words. No, write them. Write them. And I said, you should all have a fountain pen, right? All your kids, you should give them a fountain. This is a Parker, about 1955. A Parker, basic office pen. It's nothing. It's just old, which is good, but it's just your simple office pen. For some reason, the maroon was a popular color for several years there. But they should be writing their papers by hand. That's part of the cold turkey thing. Don't think, when I was in grad school in the 80s, computers were starting to come and say, oh, this is going to revolutionize writing. Kids are going to be such better writers because they can just revise so much more easily, just deleting. We have these programs now where it'll fix your grammar automatically for you, spell check and so on. Well, okay. In 2006, the College Board added to the SAT a writing section, the essay. From 2006 to 2015, when all the web writing, the cell phone writing took off, writing scores on the SAT went down every year but 2 years when they were flat. By 2015, it was so embarrassing, the SAT made the writing section optional. Okay? The ACT has some writing on it. Those scores have gone down as well. And I think a lot of that is because of all the screen time, but also writing, all this typing out your papers by not writing by hand. Tell your kids when they go to college, take notes by hand. The research is solid on this. If they take notes by hand, they retain the material better. They understand the lecture material better. Why is that? Because when they're typing, they can type fast enough to reproduce almost the lecture. They're not processing it. When you write by hand, it's slower, so you got to start selecting. You got to start filtering. You have to know, this is important, get all this. Okay, this is just a transition. You're already processing the material in the act of writing it up. So, that's the idea. But tell your kids, don't bring your laptop to class. Don't. You don't need it. Write down the material. Some schools, they're all wired and everything because they think it improves learning. It doesn't. There's no evidence that a digital classroom produces better learning outcomes than a non-digital classroom, and a digital classroom is very expensive to maintain as well. So the old 19th century way, we want the kids to do that in their schoolwork. That's a cold turkey thing with their writing. I think that we can say that. So if your child, I mean, I don't know, can you persuade a 13-year-old when all her friends have a phone? That phone isn't good for you. Does that, can that, I know it's not good for me, but my friends, you know, I know it's stupid. I mean, I had students say, I hate Facebook, but I can't leave it, or I lose too much of my life, right? Everyone's meeting at the corner, and I didn't get there because I didn't have a phone to know the, you know, the texts. I didn't get that. So it's the social pressure that I think makes the tool very, very compelling for them. If, you know, here's what you need to do. You need to find other parents who are with you on this. Other parents of your kids, of your child's friends, who can reinforce, so that your child isn't the only one, right? Not the oddball, right? With the, you know, with the tyrannical parents who won't give them the tools. I think finding other parents so that there can be a little community of non-digital. Anyway. Yes? Yes, sir.
So now we're going to throw AI into the mix. What do you see coming from that?
Nothing but evil. Okay. What will AI bring into the mix? Well, you know, as I said, a lot of AI is oriented toward this immortality thing that several very prominent Silicon Valley people are shooting for. But look, the AI stuff is, you could talk about automation in general. How much of automation is deteriorating human capacities? This is a concern in aviation, for instance. You know, when you take an airline flight, I don't want to scare all of you, but only a few minutes of that flight is controlled by the pilot himself. You know that. It's pretty much the landing. Even the takeoff is largely automated. But the landing, that's where the pilot takes over. But there have been some cases where we've had some bad things happen because the pilot seemed to be lulled, right, into a loss of control. The French flight that went down over the Atlantic a few years ago, for instance, a big airline, they just, the report concluded the pilots had lost cognitive control of the airplane. Cognitive control. They didn't know what was going on. They were doing it, and they didn't know. The co-pilot, it was actually his fault. But the idea is that too much of the pilot's work is already done by a robot, by software, instead of by the skills were deteriorating. Map reading, all right? Millennials can't read maps. They don't have to, right? They've got the Google Maps and Waze. So the concern is not doing things for yourself. Is a loss of skill, right? A loss of ability, and this is something that a few people have talked about. Matthew Crawford is a prominent voice on this. Jordan Peterson talks about this. It's very important that young people know how to do things with their hands, to know how to do things like change a tire, to know how to do, you know, when I would get holes in my socks, I would actually sew them up. So my son would see me fixing something without just throwing it away and going, go get a new one. Oh, you know how to use it. Sailors all know how to use a needle and thread. It's crucial. Sailors know how to tie knots, right? These things, knowing how to do things, doing things with your hands, right? Cooking with your hands. Handwriting, you know? signing your name in having a nice signature, rather than, now in some stores, how do you pay? You just put your hand over, and it reads your fingerprints, and it's got all your financial stuff on file, and you just walk, wow, the miracles of technology, I actually always try to go where, in the checkout line, where there's a real person checking out the stuff rather than just using the checkout. Why? Because I don't want to talk on the phone to a robot. I want to talk to customer service, a real person. They're Delta, right? So, doesn't it drive you crazy? Just get me to a real person, a human voice. I can't take to answering all these questions. So, I think that this is one concern, that again, human skill is deteriorating. Also, look, the AI, anyone who thinks that the AI isn't about someone making money off of us is a chump, all right? What do you think they're doing this because you think they're creating driverless trucks so that they can free truck drivers to read poetry and listen to opera or something? And I don't mean a lot of truck drivers do listen to opera, okay? I'm not criticizing, but you think that they're trying to help them have better lives? And they're putting it out of a job so the companies don't have to pay for health care, for benefits. Corporations love to get rid of human workers. They love to get rid of people. People are expensive. Okay? A robot doing a work in a warehouse isn't going to have an accident and break a toe. Okay? And there's been no workers' comp for robots. So the AI, Karl Marx, he was right about some things. Follow the money. Follow the money. Who's making money on this, and who's losing money on this? I don't understand why. Why? And come back to the grocery store. Why does Whole Foods have to have 10 self-checkouts and only 2 aisles are open of a human being? Makes sense, right? The bean counters can say, this is the way to go. So I think AI is awful. I think it's an awful thing. I think it also is bad for human relations, right? In a few years, we're going to see more and more kids being taught by robots, by software. In English class, the 6th graders are all going to be at a screen, and there's going to be a program that'll show sentences with grammatical errors, fix the error. If the student does it right, the student can move on to another example. If the student doesn't do it right, the program can show the error and then explain to the student what needed to be done, and then we'll go back to that kind of error and make the student do it again. Why do we need a teacher? We don't need a human being to do that. A robot can do that. Now, there's a teacher shortage, so this is great. We can just get the kids all with their own screen relating to these software teachers taking place. Now, what's going to happen? The top 15, 20% of households, they'll have human teachers. The rest of us, I'm not in that 15%. The rest of us will have mechanical teachers. Our kids will be in front of a screen all the time. That's AI at work. It'll be a case where, again, the elite will be making all of this happen, and they will not be suffering any of the consequences. They're not going to be involved for their own kids. It's like Silicon Valley. My kids aren't on screens, but I'm getting every other kid I can possibly get hooked on a screen. Okay, so this is my take on AI, but it's coming. The money, the big companies, the state, they can't say no to it. Yes. That's right.
But people are trying to make it more and more convenient in this whole thing of cremation so that we can have it at a date that's convenient for us.
Right, right. We really do try to clean up death to a great extent. We do things like, San Francisco disallowed burial within city limits. This was several years ago. The cemetery used to be a very important part of civic life. You would see families having picnics in cemeteries by the graves of family members. You would have family plots there. The cemetery, the funeral was an important civic event. That's gone now, and I would align that with the loss. I would align that with the loss of faith, the loss of the sense of the transcendent. The end of Christendom. I would attribute it to that, and then the assisted suicide issues, the pulling the plug issues, abortion, right? This is a Down syndrome. We don't want that, right? I think that these are all forms. These are all forms of the denial of meaningful death. Here, meaningful death. I mean, I had a friend, a close friend, who died of cancer. He was a very popular academic. He had no kids. But I was with him in the final weeks. And people kept coming by, friends, academics, professor colleagues, a lot of students, former students. And they were all secular. None of them were people of faith. My friend was he was a secular Jew. I would tell him, Joe, Jack and I, we're going to be lighting candles for you and praying for you this weekend. That meant something to him. Even though he wasn't a believer, it was something meaningful we were doing for him. I was telling him, we are praying for your soul here. All of his friends visiting him, they had nothing. They had nothing to say. They could offer nothing meaningful about his life or his death. They had no rituals. They had no prayers. I saw them. They didn't know what to say to him at the end. Okay? They could say to him all kinds of stuff during his life. No, didn't know how to address his death. They didn't know how to do it. So, what do we do? Yeah, we make it very clean, right? We sort of put old people away, so we don't have to see them die. In a lot of cases, I think that this is all secular society does not know how. Prosperous liberal society doesn't know how to handle death. Yeah. If I were a secular, modern liberal, I wouldn't know how either. So, Father, yes.
Thanks. For a family to choose to take time to establish a ritual of prayer, to read, to write, to cook, to choose real things and meaningful things, that requires a reprioritization of time. Like we've been doing this thing, we're kind of, like families are an object in motion. They have a habit of a way of life. And to make that change to, to counteract the false gods by spending time with the real God.
Stop binge watching.
Right.
Okay?
You have to
what are you taking all these hours and hours to binge watch? Sorry.
So, right, you do have to do that. But that's like a choice. I have to stop and redirect. And objects in motion stay in motion unless they're enacted by a force. And it seems to me one force is I just feel the pain and the bankruptcy of this cultural way of living that we've uncritically adopted. But it seems that people are very resilient to that pain and not reassessing and making adjustment. I think another version is to be attracted by something that's true and beautiful. And so my question for you is, have you seen in the wild, as you mentioned a moment ago, communities of families that are able to help and reinforce each other, and we're all fallen people, to make that kind of change in an encouraging and upbuilding way? Have you seen that where it's established and growing?
I would say that the parents who start homeschooling, that requires a massive adjustment of life. They do it precisely because they know we got to go this far. They're a little appalled at what they see in public school for their children. And so it's a huge commitment. But you see more and more parents doing this. Parents who start a new school, right? Who start a new charter school or a new private school. That's a case of people doing that. What I'm sorry to say is I don't see all that many examples taking place when I look at all the kids who are in pretty bad shape. When I was in New York, when I go to New York, still go to New York City, what I see on the subway of teenagers is awful. It's just awful. And I think, what is the home life of these kids who are yelling obscenities that you have heard, we've all heard them by now, right? But just nasty behavior, aggressive and hostile, and nowhere in their lives are those kids shown something better. And it's never going to happen for them. There's no, as you put it, there's no opposing force to this. That's why the schools are so important. For a lot of kids, schools are the only place where they're going to get the better things, the forms of beauty and grace and faith. Because they might, again, home is dysfunctional in some ways. I wish I saw that much, much more. And everyone knows we're in very bad shape in this country. Everyone feels this. Right and left. The left is winning in so many ways, especially in the culture. They're not happy, right? They don't feel things are right in this country, and conservatives really don't feel. Religious and social conservatives really worry about things. And I think a lot of families are striving for some kind of big life change. A lot of people are moving. There's a lot of mobility going on. People are leaving cities. California has lost population. Okay, Los Angeles, New York City has lost a lot of population, and it's especially children. The number of school children has gone down 3% this year. That's huge. Just 1 year, 3%. The New York school system has lost more than 100,000 kids in the last couple of years. That's a sign. And people moving away. People moving to places. You guys, you're growing like crazy here. I've been driving around hotel and back and different events. Building is going on everywhere in this town. You must have a lot of people moving here. I wonder if they're, I don't know if they're families or not, but I think a lot of people are leaving cities, big cities, because of the cultural, social chaos that they find in those cities. Just quickly, in New York City, Park Avenue, I went in there the other day, Park Avenue and 34th, I think it was 34th. So Midtown, high business part of the city. I walk into the CVS, there's a guard at the door. all the cases are locked. They're covered with a plastic, I mean, toothpaste, toothbrushes, shampoo. They're all locked. And I go up the escalator, and a guy says, if you need anything, let me know. If I want something, he has to unlock it. All the freezers and the food is locked up. So what kind of, society is this turning into? Well, that's why a lot of people have moved out of New York City, especially those with kids. So that's happening. But I think we're in a convulsion right now of a lot of people not knowing what to do, thinking of doing drastic things. Unfortunately, I think a lot of them don't take the right course, right? And what is the right course? Get into the church. That's the right course. Okay, that's number one. All right, go to church. All right, worship, become Catholic. That's what we, structure, the structure of the Stations of the Cross. All right, the structure, the meaning of the sacraments. Right? The Mass. What does it mean? Everyone lines up. Doesn't matter who you are. Okay. I mean, a lot of the social progressives, they talk about no discrimination and doesn't matter who you are. The Catholics have been practicing that, with every Mass for a couple millennia. So this is where they should go, and go to Catholic schools as well. And I'm a fan of the classical liberal Catholic education model. I think that's exactly what a lot of the kids need. So.
Very, Mark, thank you very much. I think we'll finish for this evening, and
Okay,
then we'll
okay.
continue tomorrow. So thank you so much for a great talk and great questions and answers. So.
Okay.
We will see you
I'll
tomorrow.
go out there if people want a copy. They're $10 if you want a copy of the book to sign. I'm happy to do that for you. So.
You can dedicate it to your son.
Pardon?